Welcome to session 6 of our anxiety management course. In our previous session, we talked about panic. We explored what panic is, who gets panic, what keeps panic going, and how can we manage panic. At the end of the previous session, we encouraged you to use a panic diary, as well as practice controlled breathing and relaxation techniques. I hope you found the last session helpful. Try not to get discouraged if you don't see the results as of now. Making changes is not easy. Keep practicing the techniques we discussed and you will hopefully feel better with time. In this session, we will discuss rumination and worry. Importantly, we will talk about a number of techniques that can help us to manage our worrying thoughts. So let's start by discussing rumination. When we feel low, we often dwell on things that have happened in the past or worry about things that might or might not happen in the future. Going over and over things that happened in the past is called rumination. Rumination is past-focused and it often involves dwelling on losses and personal failings. When we ruminate, we often engage in if-only thinking. We focus on regrets we might have, like things we have not done or things we think we should have done. As we do that, we are likely to end up feeling sad, anxious, unmotivated, ashamed, and hopeless. At other times, it is not the past but the future that makes us anxious. We worry that something bad is going to happen or that we will be unable to cope with things that are to come. When we worry, we often think in what-if terms, and we often imagine the worst possible scenario. Thinking this way can be very stressful, leading to anxiety, fear, and panic. Worrying also makes us feel out of control and hopeless. We often dwell on things or worry about the future to reduce our distress or overcome our problems. Unfortunately, we often end up increasing and prolonging our distress and making the problems bigger. Rumination and worrying make us feel negatively about ourselves, our past, and our future. In fact, they stop us from getting better. Rumination and worrying also stop us from thinking clearly, often interfering with our daily life. Constantly chewing over things is exhausting for our mind and body and can become a habit. Moreover, it is common to engage in unhelpful behaviors in order to escape from our worrying thoughts. We might start drinking too much, taking illicit drugs, overeating, or self-harming. Despite all the disadvantages of worrying, people who worry often hold positive beliefs about worry, which means that they believe that their worrying has many benefits. For example, they might think that worrying helps them to cope with things or prepares them for bad things that might happen. They might also believe that worrying helps them to solve problems, or that if they worry, they will be motivated to do things. Some people are convinced that worrying decreases the chances of bad things happening. Beliefs about worrying can also be negative. For example, we might believe that worrying is dangerous and will lead to a nervous breakdown or an illness. We might also believe that we have no control over worrying and that it will never stop. Importantly, positive and negative beliefs about worrying can be very unhelpful. Believing that worrying is beneficial, helpful, and valuable to you makes you reluctant to give it up. Believing that worrying is uncontrollable and dangerous makes you feel bad. The chances are you wouldn't feel as bad if you thought you were in control of your worrying, as opposed to thinking that your worrying is dangerous and in control of you. The question is, how can we manage rumination and worry? We will discuss 3 different strategies that can help with rumination and worry. First of all, you can challenge your beliefs about worry. In session 3, we discussed thought challenging in detail. You might wish to watch session 3 again to help you with challenging your beliefs about worrying. You can challenge or dispute your beliefs about the benefits of worrying by evaluating if they are accurate and true and examining the evidence you base your beliefs on. The following questions can be very useful when disputing your beliefs about worrying. What makes you think worrying is uncontrollable? What's the evidence for your beliefs? Exactly how does worrying help you prevent or avoid bad things? Is there any evidence that goes against your beliefs about worrying? Have there been situations where you haven't worried and things have still turned out okay? Does your worry stop eventually? Think about your past experiences with worry when answering those questions. Second of all, you can postpone your worry to help you limit the amount of time you spend worrying. If you want to postpone your worry, it will be helpful to create a worry period. If you wish to do that, consider choosing a particular time, place, and length of time for worrying. This time, place, and duration should be the same each day. For example, at 6 p.m. in the study room for 20 minutes. Make the place unique, comfortable, and free from distractions. It should not be somewhere you go to regularly, like a lounge room chair. It rather should be somewhere you assign for the worry period only. The time should be convenient, so you can regularly follow through with the task. It should not be too close to bedtime. After you have decided on the practicalities of your worry period, every time you become aware of a worry, you want to postpone that worry to that period. At that time, you might want to briefly note your worry on paper or phone and remind yourself that you will have time to think about it later. No need to worry about it now. You will be in a better position to deal with it during the worry period. If you're struggling with letting go of a worry, turn your focus to the present moment and the activities of the day. This will help you let go of the worry until the worry period arrives. When your worry period comes round, settle yourself down at the place you have chosen and take some time to reflect on the worries you had written down from the day. Only worry about the things you have noted, if you feel you must. If all or some of the worries you wrote down are no longer bothering you or no longer seem relevant, then no further action is required. If you do need to worry about some of them, spend no longer than the set amount of time you specified for your worry period. What can you do with worries that are beyond your control? If your worries are out of your control and you cannot do anything about them, try to first acknowledge them and then let them go. Say to yourself, I don't have to think about that right now. It can wait until I feel stronger. There is nothing I can do to stop my thoughts, but I can choose not to focus on them. However, if there is something you can do about the problem you're worrying about, but you don't know where to start, you might want to use the problem-solving technique, which we will now discuss. Why is the problem-solving technique useful? The problem-solving technique can be more useful than dwelling on and worrying about things, as it helps us to be proactive about the problems we face. So, how does it work? The problem-solving technique involves 8 steps. You want to begin by clearly stating the problem. Be as specific as you can. An example of a clear and specific problem would be feeling anxious about missing the deadline for a report. Step 2 involves thinking about consequences of not solving the problem. Step 3 involves thinking about the benefits of solving the problem. Step 4 involves brainstorming. What ideas can you think of to solve the problem? Write down as many ideas as you can, no matter how silly they may seem. Then go through each of your options and think about the pros and cons of each of them. In step 5, You want to choose the best option from the list you made based on the advantages and disadvantages of each. You may want to choose more options than one. Step 6 involves working out a plan. Plan step by step what you will need to do to carry out the option you have chosen. Think about what you want to do, when you want to do it, how do you want to do it. Consider things that could cause you problems. How can you get around those problems? Make sure your plan is realistic and achievable. Once you have made a plan, just do it. Carry it out. After you have put your plan into action, review how it went. Think about whether it was helpful to do what you did. Did you achieve what you set out to achieve? If not, how could you have done it differently? Did you achieve any progress at all, however small, towards your goal? What have you learned from this experience? Now we know all the steps of the problem-solving technique, we can look at Mark's example. Mark feels anxious. He was asked by his boss to write a report at work and he hasn't started it yet. His colleagues have nearly finished their reports, which makes him feel worse. He worries about what will happen if he doesn't get it finished on time and thinks that even if he does, it will not be up to the standard it should be. The more he thinks about it, the more anxious he becomes. Let's try to help Mark solve his issue using the problem-solving technique. Mark's problem is that he has a report due in a couple of weeks and he hasn't started it yet. It makes him feel anxious. If Mark doesn't meet his deadline, he will annoy his boss, as it will affect his own deadlines. He will feel disappointed in himself for not trying. He will also be worried about what his boss will say or think about him. If Mark meets the deadline, he will feel better about himself. He won't be worried about the problem anymore. Meeting the deadline will give him the confidence to problem solve in the future. Rather than worrying about the situation, Mark needs to think about possible solutions to his problem. First, Mark could contact his boss to ask for more time. Or he could just make a start on it. He might still get it finished on time. Mark could set aside time each day to work on his report. If he still struggles, he could ask his colleagues for help. Alternatively, he could try to reuse an old report and hope no one notices. He could also decide not to do it and leave his job or get sacked. If we take into account pros and cons of each possible solution to Mark's situation, it seems that Mark making a start on the report would be the best option for him at this time. He could set aside some time each day to work on it, and he could discuss his progress with his colleagues. Only if Mark continues to struggle, he could contact his boss, explain the problem, and ask for more time to work on it. Mark needs to work out a specific plan. He could set aside 3 hours each day to do his report. He could make a start on it on Thursday. He could aim to do 400 words each day, which gives him extra time to read over it and make any changes that might be required. If he sticks to that plan, he's likely to finish his report on time and make the deadline. Now Mark needs to put his plan into action. After completing the report, it would be useful for Mark to reflect on his experience and what would help him to do well in the future. Mark managed to finish his report on time. Next time, he needs to make a plan once he's given a task to complete it, as leaving it to last minute makes Mark miserable and anxious. It also makes him less likely to be successful. Mark found others' support really helpful and realized that it's easier to come up with a good solution and cope well with things with help from others. At this point of our course, you might wish to look at worksheet 6.1, which you will find on our website. Worksheet 6.1 encourages you to think of a specific problem you're currently facing and look for possible solutions. What would be your first step? Remember to make your problem as specific as you can. Our anxiety management course is coming to an end. You might want to take some time to reflect on what we have discussed and what might be particularly useful to you. Remind yourself about all the techniques we have covered that might help you to overcome your anxiety. I hope you found the course helpful. Don't get discouraged if your mood has not improved so far. Keep practicing the techniques we discussed, and if you feel stuck at any point, go back to the relevant videos and try again. If you think about giving up, remind yourself that changes can be difficult to make as they take a lot of effort and time. If you stick at it for long enough, your mood will eventually improve.